गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गाना शॉट। गाना शॉट में आप सबको स्वागत है। सत श्री अकाल एंड प्रणाम। आज हम इंडिया एंड रशिया के बारे में बात करेंगे एज पार्ट ऑफ द ग्लोबल मैट्रिक्स। और ये इंडिया और रशिया रिलेशनशिप के बात के लिए कैसा बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ ब्रिगेडियर अरुण सहगल है दोबारा। सर, वेलकम टू गाना शॉट वंस अगेन।
Thank you, sir.
And I understand you're shortly leaving to the US for this, for continuing the Indo-US dialogue.
Yes, sir.
That's great. So, हमारे साथ we have a real expert, right, who is in the thick of things. So, we'll today go over the phases of this power matrix, global power matrix, with the focus on Russia. So, since we've been through all these phases, but many of our viewers haven't, उनको पता नहीं है, या जो first time viewers हैं, to put them in picture, I'll just go through a small presentation and then you can take it on, sir.
Absolutely, sir.
Right. अभी हम देखेंगे इंडिया रशिया इन द ग्लोबल पावर मैट्रिक्स। सबसे पहले, जैसे मैं पिछले 3 दिन से बता के आ रहा हूँ, इंडिया का जीडीपी 2025 में जापान के जीडीपी को पार करने का आशंका है, और ये जापान के मुताबिक, और तकरीबन 2030 तक $7 ट्रिलियन का इकोनॉमी हो जाएगा हमारा। जब और इस दौरान हमारा शक्ति बढ़ता जाएगा और एक ग्लोबल प्लेयर बन के हम उभर के आएंगे, इसमें दो राय नहीं है। और सेंट्रलिटी ऑफ इंडिया के बारे में हमने पिछले 3 दिन से बात किया, और ये भी हमें ये क्लियर उभर के आ रहा है कि इंडिया इज चेंजिंग फ्रॉम अ स्विंग स्टेट टू अ बैलेंसिंग स्टेट। आजकल सब मानते हैं कि इंडिया इज अ बैलेंसिंग स्टेट, बट जैसे जैसे हमारा अर्थव्यवस्था बढ़ेगा और हमारा शक्ति बढ़ेगा, कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव नेशनल पावर बढ़ेगा, we will become a controlling state and we'll control the areas which are key to us, basically the Indian Ocean region, right? और ये कार्टून है, ये ही स्टार्ट किया था ये होल प्रोग्राम को कि किसी का कल्पना है, ये कोई अमेरिकन का कल्पना है कि जो बड़े बड़े 4 देश हैं दुनिया में, ये 4 होंगे, राइट? और ये जो मैट्रिक्स है, जो बार बार मैं बात करते आ रहा हूं, जिसमें इस क्वाड्रिलैटरल में इंडिया और यूएसए का खींचा हुआ है अलोंग द डायगोनल, रशिया और चाइना का खींचा हुआ है अलोंग द डायगोनल, और ऑपोस चारों कोने में ये जितने देश हैं उनके जिस तरीके से अट्रैक्शन है या रिपल्शन है, ये दर्शाया गया एरोस के जरिए, और वो काफी सेल्फ एक्सप्लेनेटरी है। और बात यह है कि आजकल इस मैट्रिक्स में काफी हरकत हो रहा है। आज जैसे आपको पता है, हमारे प्रधानमंत्री गए हुए हैं यूएसए, उनका प्रेसिडेंट को मिलने के लिए अलोंग दिस डायगोनल। दूसरे डायगोनल में चाइना और यूएसएसआर के डायगोनल में चाइना का जो स्पेशल एनवॉय है, पिछले हफ्ते वो गए, 10-15 दिन पहले वो गए थे यूक्रेन, और यूक्रेन से वो गए रशिया और पुतिन को मिले ताकि वहां शांति स्थापित कर सकते हैं। इसके साथ साथ कल जी जिनपिंग और ब्लिंकन, जो सेक्रेटरी ऑफ स्टेट हैं यूएसए के, उनका मेल मिलाप हुआ है कि किस तरीके से यूएसए और चाइना का जो रिलेशंस है उसमें थोड़ा नरमी आए, सो दैट ताकि वो लड़ाई की ओर ना चले। उसके साथ साथ परसों के दिन वैंग गी, जो पुराना फॉरेन मिनिस्टर था चाइना का, उसने एक एडिटोरियल लिखा ग्लोबल टाइम्स में, जिसमें उन्होंने ये जो इंडो यूएस पार्टनरशिप के बारे में काफी आलोचना किया। और पहली बार ग्लोबल टाइम्स में इस पूरे जब से मैं ग्लोबल टाइम्स पढ़ रहा हूं, उन्होंने एक शब्द इस्तेमाल किया कि इंडिया इज अ रीजनल पावर। जब चाइना मानता है कि हम रीजनल पावर हैं, तो हम जरूर रीजनल पावर होंगे, क्योंकि आज तक चाइना का रवैया यही है कि एशिया में एक ही पावर है, वो है चाइना, राइट? और जहां तक रशिया की बात है, ये दुनिया में सबसे बड़ा देश है, ये रिसोर्स सरप्लस नेशन है, चाहे तेल ले लीजिए, गैस ले लीजिए, मिनरल्स ले लीजिए, और कुछ भी ले लीजिए। ये नेट टेक्नोलॉजी एक्सपोर्टर है। और ये अभी नहीं है, यूएसएसआर जब था तब भी रशिया नेट टेक्नोलॉजी एक्सपोर्टर था। और ये इसके पास एक फुल्ली मॉडर्न मिलिट्री है, और खास करके रशिया के अंदर इट हैज गॉट ट्रमेंडस नेशनल रेजिलियंस। ये इनका इतिहास है। चाहे हिटलर ने इनका आधा देश जीत लिया, तब भी इन्होंने हिटलर को मात दिया उन दिनों में। और उसके बाद भी इनको मात करना इनिशियली कोई नई बात नहीं है, पर ये छोड़ते नहीं है आखिरी दम तक। आखिरी दम तो होता नहीं है इनका, और लड़ते रहते हैं। पर आजकल ये यूक्रेन में काफी फंसे पड़े हैं, और इसके वजह से इनका जियोपॉलिटिक्स और इकोनॉमिक्स के ऊपर काफी असर हो रहा है। राइट। और जहां तक यूक्रेन की लड़ाई है, यूक्रेन वॉर है, इससे पहले ही रशिया एंड चाइना हैड अ नो लिमिट फ्रेंडशिप, जो पिछले साल बीजिंग ओलंपिक्स, विंटर ओलंपिक्स में ये इन्होंने तकरीबन मान लिया, बिटवीन शी जिनपिंग एंड पुतिन। पर आजकल इसके ऊपर, ये नो लिमिट फ्रेंडशिप के ऊपर, देयर इज अ सेकंड थॉट्स, दोबारा सोच हो रहा है। एक स्कॉलर ने बोला चाइना शुड रिकंसिडर रशिया टाइज, मेक फ्रेंड्स विद मोर कंट्रीज। एक पीएलए का स्ट्रेटेजिस्ट, एक पीएलए का जनरल ने बोला कि चाइना वाज एंग्शियस एंड रिग्रेटफुल ओवर द यूक्रेन वॉर। उसके मुताबिक वो, इट वाज अ सरप्राइज टू देम कि ये लड़ाई हो गया है, और उनके ऊपर बुरा असर हो रहा है। राइट। और बहुत लोग ये बोल रहे हैं कि रशिया चाइना ट्रेड है वो उस लेवल तक आ गया कि वो आगे बढ़ नहीं सकता। हालांकि लीडर्स बोल रहे हैं अनप्रेसिडेंटेड हाई लेवल रिलेशंस, लोन लिमिट्स वगैरह वगैरह, पर इनका जो आर्थिक रिलेशनशिप है वो उस स्तर पर पहुंच गया जहां से ये आगे नहीं बढ़ सकते। राइट। हमारा जो प्रधानमंत्री आज जब वॉल स्ट्रीट जर्नल ने इनका उन्होंने एक इंटरव्यू दिया है यूएसए में, और उन्होंने खास करके क्या बोला ऊपर, इंडिया टॉप मोस्ट प्रायोरिटी इज पीस। राइट। और ये पूछा गया था उनको कि भाई आपका क्या रवैया है ऑन रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर, तो हमारा प्रधानमंत्री ने ये बोला, और इन्होंने ये बोला कि इंडियाज पोजीशन इज वेल नोन एंड वेल अंडरस्टूड बोथ इन द यूएस एंड द वाइडर वर्ल्ड। याद रखिए, इन्होंने पुतिन को बोला था कि ये लड़ाई का युग नहीं है। राइट। और पर ये भी बोला है कि रशिया, न्यू दिल्ली हैज रिफ्यूज्ड टू कंडेम ओल्ड एली रशिया फॉर द वॉर इन यूक्रेन एंड हैज इंक्रीज्ड इट्स ट्रेड विद मॉस्को टू रिकॉर्ड लेवल्स। ये यूएसए में एक ये राय है, और ये आम राय है। ये आम राय यूएसए में नहीं है, ये चाइना में भी है। राइट। चाइना का व्यू क्या है कि इंडिया यूएस रिलेशनशिप के बारे में, वो बोलते हैं कि यूएस इज नॉट कंसर्न्ड अबाउट इंडियाज पोजीशन ऑन द रशिया यूक्रेन वॉर। और उनको ये भी परवाह नहीं है यूएसए को कि क्या इंडिया रशिया का तेल खरीदता है कि नहीं। सिर्फ उनका एक मकसद ये है, इंडिया यूएस का जो रिलेशनशिप है, इतना स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप इतना तगड़ा करो ताकि वो चाइना के अगेंस्ट इस्तेमाल हो सके। उनका राय ये है, और मेरे ख्याल में वो काफी हद तक ठीक भी है। राइट। पर यूएसए में क्या व्यू है? यूएसए में व्यू है कि भाई India's Russia's growing dependence on China will make it an unreliable partner for India, क्योंकि आजकल उनका जो इक्वेशन है बड़ा नजदीक है। तो वी कैन नॉट डिपेंड ऑन रशिया, ये व्यू यूएसए का है, और वो हमें ये पट्टी पढ़ाते रहते हैं। और उनका ये बात है कि ये बहुत लोगों ने लिखा है, चाहे एशले टेलिस क्यों ना हो या डैनियल मार्के क्यों ना हो, आज फॉरेन पॉलिसी में दो भारतीय लोग, टू इंडियंस ऑफ, आई मीन टू अमेरिकन्स आई थिंक ऑफ इंडियन ओरिजिन, सुमित गंगुली एंड समवन एल्स हैव रिटन, एंड इनका जो सम टोटल जो बोलते हैं कि इंडिया कैन नॉट हैव इट्स केक एंड ईट इट टू। तो ये अलग अलग राय है, अलग अलग विचार हैं, अलग अलग दृष्टिकोण है। पर हमारा जो रशिया के साथ नाता बहुत दिन से है, और इसी चीज के बारे में विस्तार में बताने के लिए आई सर, प्लीज टेक इट ऑन एंड you may like to give your views, and then we can have a discussion at the end.
Thank you, General Shankar. As usual, you put the whole subject in a great degree of context, so that makes my job so much more simpler. The first point we have to understand is that There are three basic fundamentals that define the India-Russia relationships. There is a political, there is a strategic, and there is a military technological and strategic, military technological perspective that defines our relationship. Politically, if we go back to 1971 war and prior to that, and every time there has been a trouble for India, Russia has been our main partner, which has bailed us out. And and all along, whenever there has been voting in the United Nations Security Council, particularly related to Kashmir and other intricate issues, Russia has been most supportive partner for India. So this is something which we need to recognize of the past. The second part is strategically, Russia has been a great supporter of India, and in the continental construct. And the fact of the matter is that we have two legacy challenges. One is Pakistan, another is China. The Russian presence in Eurasia has always been a factor of support for India, and through that, the Central Asian republics, prior to the breakup of Soviet Union, were within the sphere of influence of Russia and much more supportive to us. But even post that, given the Chinese Russian influence, the whole logic of support to us in the continental space, given the fact that we have two main principal challenges, that is on our borders in the north as well as in the west, Russia has been a great sense of support, and also a great sense of support in fighting terrorism and fighting narcotics. So that's a second issue. The the another strategic element of this is Russia has been provider to us of strategic technologies. And I would like to draw the attention of all our viewers कि क्रायोजेनिक इंजन जो हमें मिला था, वो क्रायोजेनिक इंजन जो है जिसके अंदर आजकल PSLV वहाँ उड़ती है और इट्स अ पावरफुल इंजन. So that engine was initially given to us by Russia. देन हमारे ऊपर सैंक्शन लगा दी गई आफ्टर 1988 के बाद. उसके बाद हमने अपने आप ये इंजन बनाया है. उसके अंदर भी हमारे को काफ़ी मदद मिली है रशिया से. एंड द थर्ड एलिमेंट इज ऑफ अ स्ट्रॉन्ग मिलिट्री cooperation. It will be correct to say that despite the fact that dependence on Russia for arms has gone down, but Indian military equipment continues to be about 85% or 80% of the Russian origin. What we have done in the last couple of decades is that we have tried to make huge amount of Indian effort to manage that equipment with least amount of servicing and sending it to Russia, and develop our own indigenous small and medium sector which can support this equipment. So the fact, however, remains that Russia is a key defense partner, and like General just now said, we will have to remain dependent on this equipment at least for another decades or much or more. So the question is that Russia will remain a factor in our all the three equations: the political, the strategic, and the military dimension. Therefore, in all our relations that we build over a period of time, even after this recent handshake with the United States, we have to keep the India Russia factor into account. It is for this reason that India has continued to maintain, even during the Ukraine war, a highest level dialogue with Russia, and we have continued to send our senior leadership to Russia to ensure that the highest level political understanding is not constrained by the events in what's happening in Europe. Even on Ukraine war, our stand is a principled stand. While we do not overlook the 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 territorial integrity of state being violated by the Russian invasion, but we are sanguine that the Russians' actions was not unilateral action, but an action which was driven by circumstances and the perception of existential challenge which the Russian leadership believed. And the fact that this is not a situation, I mean, I'm not going to go into Ukraine war,
यस,
but from 2014 onwards, that this whole thing has been carrying on. So
क्या ये
we,
कोई नया बात नहीं है। बात यह है कि इनका जो बिल्कुल, और ये इसमें वेस्ट का काफी हाथ है, नाटो का भी काफी हाथ है कि ये स्थिति यहाँ तक आ पहुंचा है। ये जैसे ये वेस्ट में बताया जाता है कि सिर्फ रशिया इज द विलन ऑफ द पीस, इट इज नॉट सो। सो विल नॉट गेट इनटू इट, बट यू कैन कैरी ऑन।
yeah, but the point जो इसके ऊपर तवज्जो देनी चाहिए ये है कि ये लड़ाई के अंदर जो है इंडिया का स्टैंड बड़ा सिंपल है। इंडिया का स्टैंड ये है कि जैसे जनरल साहब ने बोला, ये युग नहीं है लड़ाई का, और साथ ही साथ में हम दोनों को कह रहे हैं लड़ाई बंद करो और
और
पीस
बात
नेगोशिएशन शुरू करो, क्योंकि what is happening is due to this proxy war and the war and the ferocity of kinetic attacks which are being launched right now, it is leading to a horrendous amount of human and physical and casualties to the infrastructure. Who the country is getting destroyed. So we are not in the business in the 21st century in the 2023 to fight wars which are so destructive. Okay, now we come down to the second element of this thing, the equations. After all, this is a power balancing discussion. In this equation, let us see there are three players, critical players from Indian perspective: India, China, and Russia. We already talked about China-Russian equations. Okay, फ्रेंडशिप वो उन्होंने बोला डीप फ्रेंडशिप के बारे में, परंतु देर आर टू थ्री फैक्टर्स वी नीड टू टेक कॉग्निजेंस ऑफ राइट नाउ. The way under sanctions, Russia is forced to sell huge amount of oil, get into huge amount of trade deals, and huge amount of resources being sent to, including wheat, sent to China. So today, the Russia-China trade is touching $200 billion. Now this is a huge jump, but this is a jump of necessity, purely because the loss of oil revenue and other resource avenues which were otherwise being sent to Europe because through Nord Stream 1 and if Nord Stream 2 had come about, and the fact that the entire gas pipelines are connecting to Europe, those are now being closed to a large degree. There has been a loss of revenue. But the fundamental factor it is this: the Russians look at themselves as a European nation and not an Eurasian nation. They are not very comfortable with being a Eurasian or an Asian player. They would much rather be looked upon as a European power. But that is not happening. So, under the circumstances, Russians are forced to get into a strategic understanding with China. The dilemma is that while the Russians want to get into a strategic understanding to build them out economically and geopolitically, the Chinese are having second thoughts because Chinese are getting berated and are being pushed by the
USA.
Western countries who are now telling them is that you cannot be supporting Russia and then try and be our partner in economic terms. But please understand this, this is all grandstanding. This is all grandstanding. The grandstanding is because the intricate linking of the European Union, the intricate linking of the United States economy with China makes it impossible for them to decouple. They realized decoupling was not possible. Now they went into a concept called de-risking. Even de-risking is now the new concept is that we will not allow trading and close partnership and relationship on strategic technologies like semiconductors and earths and blah 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 and all those things. So that's the situation. Now, in this scenario, the important part of this is that India will continue to focus and remain a point of consideration both for the Russian leadership, like the Russians are dependent on China. The Russians do not want to be overwhelmingly dependent on China so that their entire future strategic space is cornered by the Chinese. Therefore, the energy sales, the trying to get technological sales, and as some reports indicate, that India is now being asked to supply them with old equipment and all cannibalized equipment and other resources, etc., to help them rebuild their capacities, which are being lost at a fast pace due to the current war. So the point we had to understand is that Russia will distance itself, and like one very senior government official whom we had a chance of meeting a couple of days back, he said that Russia will not decouple from India, but it might grow distance from India. Now, the decoupling and distancing will be a function of how does the Russian leadership looks at the relationship in India and the kind of strategic understanding, which includes incidentally defense cooperation and other issues, is looked upon. And another element, as everybody knows, is this balance of payment because we are holding a huge amount of rupee surplus, and we are not going to convert rupees into yuan to sell it to this thing like the
Yeah.
Bangladesh other people are doing. So these are the intricate issues. But the fact remains is this: what does this mean? This basically mean is in the India-China-Russia equation, India will have to manage its relationship with Russia. And that management of the relationship with Russia is a multifarious thing, which I'm not going to go into detail because it's something which will require time. A, B, and I don't want to be that explicit either. The fact of the matter is that in that, quid pro quos will have to be established. The quid pro quos will have to be then seen through. They will have their own repercussions, etc., etc., etc. So the question basically is this: from our perspective, is that despite the fact the China-Russia equations are improving, there are fissures, as was brought out in the slide, which is rightly so. The From Indian perspective, Russia remains an important element of our economic, political, and strategic equations. Therefore, we will have to manage this relationship, and that's something
तो
which we
सर जो आपने बताया, दो चार इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट आपने बताया, मैं दोबारा बताना चाहता हूँ। आपने बताया कि द इंडिया एंड रशिया इक्वेशंस, मिलिट्री इक्वेशंस विल लास्ट फॉर अ डिकेड और सो। मैं इसको विस्तार में थोड़ा एम्प्लीफाई करना चाहता हूँ। जब भी आप कोई भी मिलिट्री इक्विपमेंट खरीदते हो, वो आपके बड़ा बड़ा इक्विपमेंट, खासकर नाव या हवाई जहाज, टैंक्स, they stay with you for almost 40 to 50 years, right? इन मेनी केसेस हमारे पास जो इक्विपमेंट है वो नए इक्विपमेंट है। जैसे आपने S-400 अभी लिया है, वो अभी अभी आपने लिया है, इतना खर्च करके आपने लिया है, और ये हमारे पास कम से कम 20 साल तक रहेगा। तो अगले 20 साल तक हमारा और रशिया के बीच में नाता ठीक होना चाहिए, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं। उसके हमारा इसका हमारे पास वी डोंट हैव एन ऑल्टरनेट आल्सो, राइट? सो आवर इक्वेशन हैज टू कंटिन्यू। दूसरी बात, जिस तरीके से ये जियोपॉलिटिकल सिचुएशन गुजर रहा है, रशिया जो है वो हमें ऑयल बेचना ही पड़ेगा, तेल बेचना ही पड़ेगा उनको, और कहीं वो बेच नहीं सकते। मेरे ख्याल में अगले 3-4 साल तक और कहीं बेच भी नहीं सकते। तो हमें उसमें फायदा भी है, उनको भी फायदा है, राइट? पर इम्पोर्टेंट बात यह है कि जब हम तेल खरीदते हैं उनसे, हम रिफाइन करके हमारा सरप्लस रिफाइंड कैपेसिटी उसी तेल का कहाँ बेचते हैं? हम यूरोप में बेच रहे हैं। इसका मतलब यह है कि रशिया का तेल सीधा नहीं जा रहा है, वो इंडिया के थ्रू वही यूरोप में पहुंच रहा है। तो इसी वजह से एक हद तक ये बोलते हैं कि हम ज्यादा से ज्यादा रशिया का तेल खरीद रहे हैं, पर वो एक हद तक ही बोल रहे हैं, क्योंकि उसके आगे उनको कुछ चाहिए ये तेल, राइट? दूसरा बात यह है कि आज के दिन अगर ये जो क्वाड्रिलैटरल देखेंगे, ये चार बड़े पावर, रशिया, चाइना, इंडिया और यूएसए में, रशिया का नाता यूएसए के साथ तो है ही नहीं, बिल्कुल टूटा पड़ा है आज के दिन। तो रशिया कहाँ मुड़ के देख सकता है? एक या चाइना, और दूसरा इंडिया के साथ। अगर रशिया और चाइना का कुछ प्रॉब्लम है और वो जूनियर पार्टनर नहीं बनना चाहते हैं चाइना के साथ, तो उनको हमारे साथ संबंध जोड़ना ही पड़ेगा। जितना दे हैव टू हेज देयर बेट्स विद इंडिया, जितना हमारा डिपेंडेंस रशिया के ऊपर है, राइट, आगे जाके उनका डिपेंडेंस हमारे ऊपर भी उतना ही होगा। हालांकि इट माइट नॉट बी डायरेक्ट मिलिट्री इक्विपमेंट, बट जैसे ब्रिगेडियर साहब ने बताया, इट कुड बी इवन ओल्ड इक्विपमेंट, इट कुड बी स्पेयर्स आल्सो, राइट? एंड ये जो स्पेयर्स सिर्फ रशिया के लिए ही नहीं है, क्योंकि हमारे इर्द गिर्द बहुत देश हैं जिनके पास रशियन इक्विपमेंट है। वो भी अगर रशिया उनको स्पेयर्स के लिए हेल्प नहीं करेगा, तो वो हमारे पास आएंगे। तो अगर आप ये सब देखोगे, और इसके अलावा जो ब्रिगेडियर साहब ने बताया, तो आप बड़ा क्लियर होगा कि चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए, चाहे हमारा और यूएसए का स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप एकदम जुड़ भी जाए, फिर भी हमारा नाता रशिया के साथ टूट नहीं सकता, और कम भी नहीं हो सकता जिस तरीके से यूएसए में रिक्वायरमेंट है, राइट? तो ये है जो पॉइंट्स जो सर ने बताया, उसको मैंने थोड़ा और एलॉबरेट किया। So if you have anything else, we could, or you
Yeah,
could,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. The next point is very important. Point is uh, in the multilateral strategic gaming that is going on, we also look at scenarios. So one of the scenarios is that if in the short to medium term, China and Russia start coming together, and along with Pakistan, which is now trying to endear itself with Russia, that will create a sort of a strategic scenario which will be uncomplimentary, which will be difficult for India to manage. Not difficult to manage, but that will create problems for us. So this is something we need to take cognizance of. Uh, the if you then you look at it, then will see an arc of anti-Indian interests flowing from China, going into Afghanistan, going into Iran, and with Russia being a bystander or not a supporter of India. So, therefore, the important point from Indian perspective is this, and this is something we have to explain to our interlocutors in the West, that it is imperative for India to maintain a degree of strategic balance and maintain a degree of coherence vis-a-vis our relationship with Russia. We cannot afford to have a breakup with Russia. The second element of this is, like the general very correctly said, that our equipment will continue to remain of Russian origin for a couple of years to come. And therefore, its maintenance, its supply, etc., will remain an issue that we will have to be dependent upon on thing. Although in our discussions with the Americans keep telling us is, why are you worried about space from Russia? We will provide you enough space from Eastern European countries, and we will fill you up with space. But that's nonsense. Nonsense, because purely because we have over the time upgraded, the Russian equipment has got upgraded. They do not have that kind of sophistication like we are seeing in what is happening in the T-80 tanks and the T-80U tanks and the other artillery equipment, etc., which has been brought to Ukraine from these Eastern European countries. That's an important issue. The third issue is India had a perception of believing itself, and this is important, of Russia being our lifelong friend. There was a sense of entitlement in India about our relationship with Russia. I'm afraid that period is more or less coming to an end. We as well as Russia, will have to invest in these relationships. And these investments will be both geopolitical as well as economic. And that's an important aspect. We continue to remain dependent not only on oil, but there are a large number of strategic resources that we keep getting from Russia, and that's an important part. And India, as it becomes a 4, 5, 6, 7 trillion economy, that's my normally I keep talking about, is the fact is that we can provide a huge degree of heft on resources, technological capacities, chips. Now we are setting a semiconductor plant in India. That those issues can be sorted out vis-a-vis the Russians, because the Russian deficiencies in certain critical items, technological items, can be managed through India. So it's not a relationship because Russians understand one point: China is a fair weather friend, and China is looking for itself as a global power. And in this global power equations, China and Russia cannot be vying for the same strategic space. Russia will never give up its own strategic space, either in Eurasia or in Eastern Europe, and tomorrow in collaboration with Europe, if it gets accepted as a European power, to China. So the whole equations vis-a-vis the India, China, Pakistan, India, China, Russia are concerned, is the fact is that India will now have to invest much more heavily, and this is
That's
this
right.
element of strategic equations will have to also to be explained to the Americans. The Americans have to understand that, and the reason why Americans, last point, is Americans have to understand is this, that America in either of the theater, whether it be a European theater or be in the Asian theater, is a offshore balancer. It's an offshore power. It is far away. It has to operate its military capacities, its economic capacities in relationship with friends and allies and partners in the region. It cannot continue. Europe cannot continue in the present path of destruction without at some stage some kind of rapprochement with Russia. So the chances of European Russia rapprochement, whatever limited it is, once the ceasefire comes, are much higher, and that gives India a leeway of dealing with Russia and then with China, because China is deemed as a strategic competitor of the first order by the West, and most importantly by United States. Sorry,
No, 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 sir. आपने जो बोला है मेरे ख्याल में दो चार इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट हैं जो मैं हाईलाइट करना चाहता हूँ। अगर ऑलरेडी हमने देख लिया कि चाइना इज एक्सटेंडिंग इट्स रीच इनटू पाकिस्तान, वो तो हो ही गया। अफगानिस्तान में भी वो आउटरीच कर रहा है। ईरान के साथ उसने डील कर दिया, सऊदी अरेबिया के साथ डील कर दिया, और तुर्की के साथ भी डील कर दिया। और ये एक आर्क बन रहा है, और ये पूरा आर्क जो है कुछ दिनों के बाद ये एंटी इंडिया आर्क हो जाएगा, खास करके अलोंग द नॉर्दर्न पार्ट ऑफ वेस्ट एशिया। अगर ये हो गया तो हमारे लिए हानिकारक होगा, और इसको बैलेंस करने के लिए हमें रशिया की जरूरत है। और ये चीज आपने जो एक्चुअली जो बोला ऑफशोर बैलेंसर, मैं ये भी, आई विल नॉट से ऑफशोर बैलेंसर, आई विल से ऑफशोर इंटरेस्ट प्लेयर। क्योंकि हमारा जो इंटरेस्ट है इस इलाके में एग्जिस्टेंशियल इंटरेस्ट टू सम एक्सटेंट। यूएसए का इट इज ओनली अ मैटर ऑफ पावर, ऑफ बैलेंस ऑफ पावर, इट्स ओनली अ मैटर ऑफ इक्वेशन। क्योंकि हमारे लिए इट्स अ डायर नेसेसिटी। सो इस लिहाज से अगर हम देखेंगे तो रशिया इज नो मोर थिंग वी कैन अवॉइड। ये नहीं हो सकता है कि हम उसको भूल जाएं।
और टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड।
हाँ, टेक इट फॉर ग्रांटेड। तो ये बात अभी आते हैं, वी कैन नॉट टेक रशिया फॉर ग्रांटेड, वी हैव टू इन्वेस्ट इनटू रशिया। वो इसीलिए ये है कि एक जमाने में था, एक मैं छोटा कहानी बताता हूँ। एक जमाने में था, इनफैक्ट 10 साल पहले हम कजाकिस्तान गए थे, वहां हमारे साथ एक एलो थी, एक लड़की। और तो उसको हमने नाम पूछा, आपका नाम क्या है? उसने बोला इंदिरा। कुछ उसके बाद तो हमने पूछा, भाई आपका नाम इंदिरा कैसे हुआ? उन्होंने बताया हमें कि हम उस जमाने से हैं जब रशिया, उस जमाने में कजाकिस्तान भी रशिया का हिस्सा था। तो हम उस जमाने के हैं जब रशिया में, यूएसएसआर में हर तीसरा चौथा लड़की का नाम इंदिरा माना जाता था, रखा जाता था, इंदिरा गांधी के आफ्टर इंदिरा गांधी। तो वो जो रिलेशनशिप है, उन दिनों का रिलेशनशिप, वी कुड टेक रशिया फॉर ग्रांटेड और यूएसएसआर फॉर ग्रांटेड। राइट, हम केले दे सकते थे और उसके इन लिeu हम एमिनेशन ले सकते थे। पर वो जमाना गया। जिस हालत में रशिया आज का है, राइट, वी हैव टू इन्वेस्ट इन दिस रिलेशनशिप, क्योंकि उसका अर्थव्यवस्था तो बिगड़ेगा इस युद्ध के बाद। उसके रिलेशनशिप, जियोपॉलिटिकल रिलेशनशिप भी ठीक नहीं है। पर रशिया एट द एंड ऑफ द डे, जैसे मैंने पहले बताया, इज द ओनली वन ऑफ द फ्यू सेल्फ कंटेन्ड और सेल्फ सफिशिएंट नेशंस। अगर आप यूएसए के देखोगे, और उसके बाद द मोस्ट सेल्फ कंटेन्ड नेशन इज रशिया। इनफैक्ट इट इज अ सरप्लस नेशन। तो उस हालत, उस लिहाजे से अगर हम देखेंगे, रशिया विल ऑलवेज बी अ बिग पावर, और हमें एक पावर चाहिए इन द कॉन्टिनेंटल स्फीयर टू बैलेंस चाइना। यूएसए हमें कभी हमारा कॉन्टिनेंटल इश्यूज में बैलेंस नहीं कर सकता, ना मदद कर सकता है। राइट सर? यस सर, प्लीज।
My last point, my last 1 or 2 points.
यस सर।
We, having discussed about Russia, I just want to put in context the India-Russia-US relationship. That's also important. The what I am trying to from my perspective, what I look at is that Russia has provided what is called the platform-centric military capabilities. It has provided us platform-centric military capabilities. But what we are trying to obtain from United States is an integrated high technology capabilities which are attuned to fighting a new kind of asymmetric warfare. So when we are looking at the two elements of power or military capacity building in India, I want to tell my friends, मैं अपने दोस्तों को ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि ये दो डिफरेंट कंपार्टमेंट्स हैं, दोनों चाहिए। ये नहीं कि एक चाहिए दूसरी नहीं चाहिए। परंतु आज का जो है, आफ्टर ये वॉर देख के, यूक्रेन की वॉर देख के, किस तरह से वेपन्स इस्तेमाल हो रहे हैं, किस तरह से ड्रोन्स इस्तेमाल हो रहे हैं, किस तरह से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक वॉर हो रहा है, कैसे साइबर अटैक हो रहे हैं, उसको मद्देनजर देखते हुए we have to be very conscious of the fact is that what we are trying to get from the United States is a cutting edge technologies or cutting edge technological equipment which will help us fight what we call a non-contact or a or a standoff wars vis-a-vis our main challenges. And we will also need the major platforms and other elements which we have got from Russia. But the important part of this is that this mix of military capabilities, one in the high tech plane and other in the platform centric plane, will provide India with much more comprehensive military power than we have been achieved with. And added to that, what we are now trying to develop in missile capabilities, long range vectors, precision strike capabilities, etc., etc., anti-radiation missiles, long 200 kilometers missiles, smart drones, etc. So these are the issues that are going to be important players. Now, what does this mean? That basically this mean is that if you develop credible standoff capabilities, your kinetic war becomes that much difficult, or that much becomes lower in the order of battle. But that doesn't mean it goes out of equation. No, it doesn't. But it becomes lower in the battle. So my point, what I'm trying to say is this, is that we need both capacities. We need both capabilities. मैं व्यूअर्स को ये सिर्फ समझाने की कोशिश कर रहा हूं कि हम जो है एक और दूसरे की बात नहीं कर रहे। रशिया रशिया को अमेरिका से रिप्लेस अमेरिका को रशिया को अमेरिका से रिप्लेस नहीं कर रहे। हमें हमारी जो कैपेबिलिटी डेवलपमेंट मॉडल जो हमने बना रखा है अपने मन के अंदर, और हमारी जो सीनियर पॉलिटिकल एंड मिलिट्री लीडरशिप ने बना रखा है, उसके अंदर ये दोनों की दोनों प्रायोरिटी है। और इसलिए हम ये नहीं कह सकते, हमें एक बड़ा बड़ा सवाल उठता है कि नाउ दैट अमेरिका यू गो टू यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स यू विल रिड्यूस योर डिपेंडेंस ऑन रशिया। नो, there will be a degree of dependence that will continue, like we have discussed, as a good general has said. It's not a question of we are dependent on them because those are our major platforms. But this is also true that in the new era of asymmetric warfare, high technology warfare, the kind of capacities and other elements that we get from the United States and again an integrated interoperable environment that we can create, that will be helpful to us. Thank you. This is all I wanted to say.
थैंक यू सर, आपने बहुत विस्तार से बता दिया। और मेन जो मैसेज और व्हाट इज द निचोड़ इस पूरा हमारा जो आज का बातचीत ये है कि चाहे जितना हम यूएसए के साथ जुड़ भी जाएं, फिर भी हमारा और रशिया का जो संबंध है वो काफी दिन तक चलता जाएगा और हमारा डिपेंडेंस ऑन रशिया बंद नहीं होगा। हालांकि जो मैं देख रहा हूँ वो रशिया का डिपेंडेंस हमारे ऊपर भी बढ़ेगा, क्योंकि दे विल नीड इंडिया एज अ हेज अगेंस्ट चाइना। और उनका जो इकोनॉमिक इंटरडिपेंडेंस है जो बढ़ रहा है, जो जो पहले नहीं था, अभी दो तरफा इंटरडिपेंडेंस बढ़ रहा है, राइट? ओके, तो ये हुआ ये पूरा इंडिया रशिया का रिलेशनशिप इन दिस पावर मैट्रिक्स। और लास्ट पॉइंट ये है, इसमें कोई दो राय नहीं है, दैट आप कुछ भी बोल लो, रशिया इज सच अ रेजिलिएंट नेशन दैट इट विल कंटिन्यू टू बी अ पावर, a global power in this world.
Absolutely.
So with this in view, so we'll take on a few questions with
Okay.
your permission. Right.
Sure.
First, I'd like to thank Abhishek Dadich. Thanks for your generosity. Right. Sir, how much does Mackinder heartland theory stands true considering the technological advances of 21st century and the need of optimum utilization of equipment. He's talking of the Russian-Ukraine war as a thing.
Okay, that's a very interesting question. The the Americans are actually getting concerned about Mackinder's heartland theory when they see that the Eurasian landmass and the Asian landmass are getting integrated from the east front of Ukraine to Vladivostok, and they are extending their reach to the East China Sea through the Korean Peninsula and coming right up to through Pakistan and Iran into the Arabian Sea and West Asia. So the Mackinder's heartland theory is an area of concern, and it's an area of concern particularly for the Western powers. And similarly, is also an area of concern for us that if there is this degree of integration of power and influence that takes place in what is called the continental Asia and Eurasia, that will be a problematic. But there is one problem. The problem is how do you project power? You already control the continent. Where do you want to go project power? When you have to project power, you have to use the Mahan's
See,
theory of the domination of the seas, and through what we call the theory of what is called the rimland theory. Rimland is going to become the new center of power. So it's true, it is power is going to be there, but that power is not going to be centralized there. But these are not the places where which are dominated by global markets or global technology supply chains. The trade continues to flow through the maritime routes, and therefore any power who does not control the maritime routes will remain an incomplete power. So that's what
right,
the
sir.
logic is.
Yeah, that's a fair one. I think that's quite the thing. Dinesh Kumar, he says his question is in two parts. So there's the statement. Russia is now under Chinese influence as junior partner, but India needs Russia for multipolar world and for energy. How do you see the changing stance?
No, Dinesh, there is no changing stance. I mean, it's both your statements are a reality. We need Russian energy. Russia and China are partners. I don't think Russia considers itself as a junior partner. But please remember, whenever we talk about Russia, we have to remember two things. They don't have 3,500 nuclear weapons, the largest nuclear capabilities on the earth. Their space-based systems are one of the best in the world. Their satellites are are the best. And I have an article written by a very interesting Westerner who told how they had developed this penicillin. Must be knowing, General Saab, about the penicillin anti-artillery system, which they have just
Yes, sir.
developed 2 years. So please do not undermine Russia. In fact, today, Chinese are in the market of somehow or the other inducing Russia to give them a quiet submarine technology. Chinese submarines are too noisy. In fact, our predators, once they fly over the Indian Ocean or they take off from
Will-
Nicobar Islands, we'll be able to pick up the Chinese submarines from miles away. So the Chinese, people don't realize in the technological world what you talk about and what mature technology comes about. There's a gap of 10 to 15 years. That's something people don't understand. Technologies don't come. You produce something, it works. It's like it takes time to mature. No, so that's the problem. So so Russians will remain a major player. China will be there, yes. China, Russians at this point in time needs Chinese, so China will extract a price which they have to a degree. The Vladivostok pipeline, the Vladivostok becoming a port where the Chinese goods are now being landed, etc., etc. The Russian Far East would not have allowed them to happen, but that's happening. But that's part for the course. So these are the things which happen once the geopolitical equations change, and every country, every player, and that's why we people are talking about these things, is trying to understand these geopolitical changes and their impact, and how do we manage our relationships in those circumstances. That's the general's excellent idea about talking about this quadrilateral is all about.
Right. Many of us forget. हम भूल जाते हैं कि Russia is one of the Russian super. When USSR was there, it was a superpower because it could compete with USA on technology. Right. हम भूल जाते हैं. It was Russia which put the first man in space, not even USA. Right. And even till date, Russia is a technology surplus nation. It's a net exporter of technology.
Exactly.
Okay, right. Vishwanathan says, sir, Europe and Russia are going through demographic declines. The current conflict will accelerate this decline due to enormous loss of young life. Can Russia and Ukraine recover demographically?
Sir, I'm sure they will try and recover demographically, but they'll have to do much more hard work than they have been used to doing, and I leave it at that.
Okay, sir.
So we can
How do you
demographically
see
apart.
How do you see US changing from decoupling to de-risking? Is it a step towards US tilt towards G2 concept and ready to share power with China?
Very interesting question. Okay, based on the last couple of days statements, etc., and analysis, uh, I want to share with your readers is my perception. My perception is Chinese have not fallen for the trap, or Chinese have not fallen for Mr. Blinken's visit to Beijing. Chinese continue to believe that United States believes China is an intrinsic challenger, and and it continues to believe that United States will continue this whole issue of what was called a conflicted cooperation with China in areas which where they believe that it is in their interest. They will work with the try and work with the Chinese. But Chinese are too smart for that. They understand the dynamics of play, and they will not fall for the trap easily. But that being said, the circumstances of the geo-economic situation globally would we would like to know, they will try to understand, or what will dictate what the future course of action. And here, India becomes an important player. Now, if there is a significant shift of markets and supply chains from China, and India with $1.4 billion economy becomes a net importer of goods, and also becomes a net supplier of goods because of this newly resurrected supply chain and manufacturing, then equations begin to change. So this is a game which has now started. It is in the infancy, but this is a game which will dictate the future geopolitics. The geoeconomics will dictate the future geopolitics.
Uh, do Indian weapons and platform excel over their Russian counterparts in terms of quality, durability, and maintenance requirements?
Short answer is yes. We have been able to indigenize them. We have been able to uh, remove a lot of kings, and we have made them India-centric Russian weapons. Am I correct, sir? You are
Yeah,
from.
yes. There's no doubt at all.
I'm a tank man, but Your knowledge is much more
no,
than I have.
no, there's no doubt at all. Whatever we have developed on our own has withstood the test of time. I'll give you two examples. The Indian field gun, LFG, the light field gun. They've been in service with us from the 80s, early 80s, and they're still as good as this thing, and they match the best in the world. That's one. The second thing, if you take any of the missile systems, right? I mean, and for missile systems, हम रशिया के पास नहीं गए, हमने अपना खुद का मिसाइल सिस्टम बनाया. They again match the best in the world, right? In fact, except for BrahMos, which is again a joint production, right? So we have proven ourselves. दूसरी बात ये है कि ये जो जितने हमने ये जो T series of tanks हैं, we have maintained them better than Russia has done, actually.
Yes.
We have उनको हमने काफी खींच लिया. और आज के दिन रशिया wants spares and everything from India. वो हालत पहुंच गया है. और अदर कंट्रीज जो हमारे नेबरिंग कंट्रीज हैं वो भी चाहते हैं कि इंडिया इज बिकम्स देयर hub from which they can sustain their own equipment. So we have a lot of things in this whole thing. It's not we have to be proud of what we have done. ये मैंने सिर्फ एक दो एग्जांपल्स दिया है. टाइम मिले तो भरपूर देख आई कैन कंटिन्यू विद इट. राइट. ओके, let me see. Oh. He says the concept of India amalgamating Indian, Russian, and Western technologies into a single platform, whether it's a tank, aircraft, warship, has always captivated my imagination. I put it on because, sir, this we are masters at it.
I will
We
answer
have
that.
fought. Yeah, please, sir, carry on.
So, T-72 T-90 टैंक्स जो हैं उनके अंदर एक इंटीग्रेटेड फायर कंट्रोल सिस्टम लगाया गया है. तो इंटीग्रेटेड फायर कंट्रोल सिस्टम है वो टारगेट पिकअप से लेके टारगेट के ऊपर फायर करने के लिए इट इज ऑल ऑटोमेटेड एंड दिस इंटीग्रेटेड फायर कंट्रोल सिस्टम हैज रिप्लेस्ड द एग्जिस्टिंग साइट्स and today it provides you about a 95% first hit capability at ranges of 2000 meters, or that is 2 kilometers. Now, this is an Indian indigenization. We have done, like similarly, we have removed the R123 sets of the tanks and brought in Tadirams and other equipment. And tomorrow we are going to go in for software defined radios, etc. So what I'm trying to say is that there is a constant shift of integration. The idea is what you get from a foreign vendor is a platform. Okay, so how do you manage the platform based on your understanding, based on your thing? Like we are putting German MTU engine planning to put German MTU engine in the T-90 tanks. So it's a constant process. But the short answer to your question is yes, it can be integrated. We are doing it, and similarly the avionics in our aircrafts and as also in
Everywhere,
the
everywhere. And mind you, we have fought 4, 5 wars with it. With
yes.
this approach, different origins of equipment integrated, and we have fought and won wars with it. So we have this great experience on this, right? Do Russia and China trust in strategic point of view, as Russia and China have historical conflict? I mean, the fundamental thing is how valid is this new strategic partnership or no limits partnership in view of the historical problems they've had?
तो आपने वो पहले स्लाइड में बता दिया था कि इसके अंदर फिशर्स हैं, बातचीत होगी, फिशर्स होंगे एटसेट्रा. दिस पार्टनरशिप जो है, कोई पार्टनरशिप लॉन्ग लास्टिंग नहीं होती है एंड इट इज बिल्ट ऑन प्रिंसिपल्स. तो ये जो प्रिंसिपल है कि हमारे कॉमन एनिमी का प्रिंसिपल है, पर उसके अलावा ज़्यादा प्रिंसिपल नहीं है. अगर आप पीछे देखें कि a couple of years back, Russia had stopped providing high technology weapon systems to Chinese because Chinese was cheating them and doing a reverse engineering. So relationship is of necessity, and this relationship will continue because the necessity will be there. But in what manner will this uh, happen? We are not aware. I mean, this is something which cannot be said. And I told you in my earlier statement that the Russians like to see themselves as a Western nation rather than an East Asian or a Asian nation. So
Eurasian nations.
that's Eurasian nation. That's a mindset problem, and the mindset are very powerful in defining the leadership's discourses in how they look at the geopolitics.
In fact, Putin has always said, "Why don't you put me as part of the EU, or even let me join the NATO also?" But they have not done it for different reasons. They know that if they join the EU, Russia joins the EU or NATO, they'll start dominating it. That's their scare.
Yes.
Right. So Russia refused to prepone the S-400 delivery during Ladakh conflict. Is it because of Chinese pressure? Can China pressure will work on Russia to not help India?
Uh, First part of the question, sir, is conjecture. Second part, we must understand that all those three during these last 3 years, Russians have not let up on supplying us with equipment, what spares, etc., that we require. Russians have been helpful. So I don't think there is a future. Like I've said in my remarks, we can't take this relationship for granted. We have to nurse it. We have to provide it with fertilizer, feed it, etc. So there's something which this all up to us. It takes two hands to clap. So Russia will provide because Russia wants money. So Russia will provide, but how, in what manner this whole thing happens is something which is
Yes.
diplomatically, politically, and through our own good cooperation will have to be managed.
देखिए दुनिया बदल रहा है, रशिया का हालत बदल रहा है, इंडिया का हालत बदल रहा है। जब हालत ही बदल रहे हैं तो हमारा रवैया भी बदलना चाहिए और हमारा अप्रोच टू द होल थिंग हैज टू बी क्वाइट डिफरेंट। इसीलिए तो हम ये जैसे सर ने पहले बताया है, ये जो क्वाड्रिलेटरल जो नया आकार हमने सोचा है, इसीलिए हम डिस्कस कर रहे हैं क्योंकि इंडिया हैज टू स्टार्ट थिंकिंग डिफरेंटली। अगर हम पुराने सोच में रह गए तो हम पुराना ही रह जाएंगे। Sir, can you comment whether South Korea can replace key systems from Russia for India? For instance, the K239 Chunmo MBRL replaces the Smirch. We already operate K9 Vajras from them.
Well,
Can I
I mean,
answer this? Sir?
yeah, you are the best person.
Yeah, yeah. देखिए बात यह है कि for many things we don't need even South Koreans. For example, आपने बोला can the South Korean equipment replace the Smirch? We don't need it because we can do it on our own, right? The K9 Vajra is actually 50% Indian and 50% Korean, the way it has come about, right? It is not against the Russian. The Russian competitive system was quite useless, in fact, right? And with this, we have gone to another level. That's what what the thrust. We have to understand the Indian mentality and the Indian forces mentality. We have this great capability of sourcing our equipment from anywhere, integrating it, and fighting a holistic battle, right? Which many others can't do and don't understand also. And we also have this great capability to pick what we have to from others and produce one on our own, right? So don't underestimate what we do on our own, right? And we also have to stop thinking. If we are not happy with the Russian equipment, we should look at the Indian as option rather than looking at a US option or a South Korean option. The time has come when we have to think differently. It's okay. कुछ एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजीज के लिए हम आज के दिन रशिया के पास जा सकते हैं या यूएसए के पास जा सकते हैं या कोरिया के पास जा सकते हैं आज के लिए, पर कल के लिए हमें खुद अपने आप सोचना पड़ेगा। इसमें दो राय नहीं है, इसमें दो विचार भी नहीं है। राइट सर। या Kumar Gopalan. Is West Asia possible to incline with Russia or China in future, and any chances for reducing ties with USA? He's bringing in the West Asia angles
Uh,
and
well,
what we did speak of.
there are two issues involved. There is no doubt that Russia and China are trying to make inroads into West Asia, particularly China. But please remember, we have an ITU too, which is a trade-oriented setup with Israel, UAE, US, and India. And then we also have recently signed a very interesting, four NSAs, four national security advisors have signed a very interesting agreement of creating regional transportation hubs based on railway lines, road infrastructure, and backward connectivity to India and other important ports through container terminals. And these four countries are Saudi Arabia, UAE, India, and United States. So please do not think that the perception that Russians and Chinese or have completely thrown
They're
away the
going to take
knife.
over the West Asia.
America, that's not true. It's going to be a fight. It'll be a bitter fight. And we are, as things stand, are very clear that we want to be a player in this region and we want to get as much of investment from the region. And we are not taking sides, but we would prefer to be on the sides of more democratically aligned forces rather than uh, China. Russia will be always a number two player. So if it's China, then we are on the other side always because there is a direct competition of interest between us and them, and we are more democratically aligned. So that's the reason that, from our perspective, we would like to see a more balanced and more uh, detailed. Americans come back into the region so that we can ensure the safety, security, cooperative, and new investments like this region is trying to develop, like particularly Saudi Arabia. We all become part of that investment, a new investment climate. Thank you.
Uh, the There's another angle to this. Even the West Asian countries want to hedge. That is why you see more of them coming towards India. And India and West Asia and खास करके जो Gulf countries हैं और Saudi Arabia है या Iran हुआ and even up to Iraq, they have historical linkages with India and they trust India more, right? So that trust factor cannot be replaced by China,
Yes.
and they are very clear about that how much they can trust China, right? They're all there, so it is their interest also
And our
that they
diaspora,
maintain
sir, and our diaspora.
diaspora. देखिए हमने बनाया दुबई दुबई किसी और ने नहीं बनाया हमारे जो मेसन्स हैं हमारे कारपेंटर्स हैं हमारे इलेक्ट्रिशियंस हैं इन्होंने जाके काम करके दुबई खड़ा किया तो वो सब जानते हैं ऐसी बात नहीं है और आपको एक चीज मैं बताता हूँ हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट टिल द मिड 60s एंड अर्ली 70s बहरेन यूज्ड टू यूज इंडियन पोस्टेज स्टैम्प्स राइट उनका कनेक्ट बहुत गहरा है इंडिया के साथ सो ये वी विल नॉट दिस थिंग ओके राइट सर द लास्ट क्वेश्चन आई विल आस्क इज I mean I'll take on is this how is Russian weapons faring against NATO equipment in the present war? The performance
You
of
are the
Russian
best person.
equipment.
You are the best person to answer.
I mean, look, let's be very clear. They performed equally well and equally bad. The best outcomes have been how the weapons have been handled rather than the weapons. And ultimately, what counts is how you handle the weapons.
Yeah.
It is not, you can have the worst weapon and handle it better and come out better. So we leave it at that. This business of, having a high-tech weapon doesn't guarantee you victory. If it did guarantee victory and high technology only guaranteed victory, Taliban with slippers on wouldn't have pushed out USA, which is the most high-tech military force in the world. So there are a lot of things beyond all this in war. Uh, the last comment, sir, after this we'll close it. Russia is a real friend, but USA is cunning. But for by modern, yeah, I Nazi I don't understand. But I suppose it's cunning, but it probably wants to trap us with modern military equipment. So this is his comment and his view. We'll leave it at that. We'll not offer our thing. This is a view, but again, this is an old view. We need to change. There is some truth in it. But then this, as India goes up the value chain as a global power, we also have to change our views. That's the whole idea of this whole story. So I have finished, and I thought
Thank
we
you.
had some very good questions and answers. I mean, more great questions. If you have
Super.
anything to say, you could wrap it up, and
Well, thank you
then
very much,
we'll.
sir. I enjoyed being on your show as usual, and the questions were excellent. I mean, they indicate the interest people have taken in the show, which is very heartening indeed. Thank you very much to your viewers, and thank you
Thank you,
very much.
sir. Thanks a lot, sir, and thanks a lot to all the viewers. कल हम उपस्थित होंगे इसी 8 बजे शाम को. हम चारों उपस्थित होंगे, right? Brigadier Arun Sehgal, General Vinod Bhatia और जनरल अनिल आहूजा और हम चारों अब एक एनालिसिस करेंगे इस पावर मैट्रिक्स का. 2-3 मुद्दे लेंगे और ये मुद्दे सब इंडिया की तरफ होगा. हमने देख लिया इंडिविजुअल, हम पूरा देखेंगे इंडिया किस तरीके से ये पावर मैट्रिक्स को प्ले करना चाहिए, राइट? तो कल शाम को हम दोबारा आप सबको मिलेंगे 8 बजे. थैंक यू, गुड इवनिंग एंड जय हिंद. थैंक यू
Yeah.
सर, वंस अगेन.
God bless you, sir.